morning. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We begin this Wednesday morning with the race for the White House with 6 days to go until the election.
Another busy day is on tap for the candidates. Former President Trump is holding campaign rallies in the battleground states of North Carolina and Wisconsin. Vice President Harris will also be in North Carolina and Wisconsin today, along with a stop in Pennsylvania. Harris delivered what's being called her closing argument speech last night before a huge crowd on the Ellipse in Washington. It's the same location where Mr. Trump gave his speech on January 6th. She framed the decision she thinks voters will need to make.
This election is more than just a choice between two parties and two different candidates. It is a choice about whether we have a country rooted in freedom for every American or ruled by chaos and division.
Meanwhile, President Biden is under fire this morning after weighing in yesterday on those racist comments made by a comedian at former President Trump's Madison Square rally regarding Puerto Rico.
And just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable, and it's un-American.
The White House now doing damage control. The president later tweeted a clarification. Voters across the country are continuing to take advantage of early voting, according to the latest data from Target Smart and analyzed by the NBC News Decision Desk. More than 52 million people have already cast their ballots. For the latest, we're joined by NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, who's covering the Trump campaign. We're also joined by NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, who's covering the Harris campaign. Good morning to both of you. Vaughn, let's start with you. Former President Trump, we're hearing from him really for the first time reacting to those crude and racist comments about Hispanics that were made at his rally here in New York over the weekend. What is he saying?
Right. This is his first time publicly commenting on those remarks there about 48 hours later. I want to let you listen to part of a conversation he had with Sean Hannity where he directly responded. Take a listen.
Somebody said there was a comedian that joked about Puerto Rico or something, and I have no idea who it was. Never saw him, never heard of him, and don't want to hear of him. But I have no idea. They put a comedian in, which everybody does. You throw comedians in. You don't vet them and go crazy. It's nobody's fault. But somebody said some bad things. I don't know if it's a big deal or not, but I don't want anybody making nasty jokes or stupid jokes. Yeah. Probably he shouldn't have been there, yeah.
Guys, this is perhaps notable because Donald Trump is not one who usually walks away from his supporters, allies, or apologizes in really any way. And so for him, he's understanding of the potential repercussions. The fact that there are hundreds of thousands of Puerto Rican voters, particularly in the state of Pennsylvania, where he was actually rallying last night in Allentown, Pennsylvania, for a campaign event now with just 1 week until Election Day. And Senator Marco Rubio of Florida was with him at that event and actually walked up onto stage to announce to the crowd himself. He read the quote from Joe Biden, President Biden earlier, essentially trying to take the garbage comments made at Madison Square Garden and shift them back onto President Biden. And the way that they are characterizing President Biden's statement came across directing it towards supporters of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement.
Gabe, let's bring you in and talk about President Biden's response to those comments. We just played a bit of them a moment ago, the part he's being criticized for. What did he say, and how's the White House responding?
Hi there, Savannah. Good morning. Well, the White House is in damage control mode. As you heard Vaughn say, Trump supporters are blaming President Biden for calling them garbage. Well, you just played that video right there. The White House then released a transcript trying to clean up his comments. And the White House says the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters with an apostrophe S. Now, that apostrophe S is very key, according to the White House, because they say that he was referring to the supporters' demonization of Latinos being unconscionable and un-American. However, if you listen to the video, the president did pause and then continue with his next sentence. Still, he did then post on social media on X a clarification. And he said here, earlier today, I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump's supporter at his Madison Square Garden rally as garbage, which is the only word I can think to describe it. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. That's all I meant to say. The comments at that rally don't reflect who we are as a nation. But again, Savannah, many Trump supporters are saying that these comments are reminiscent of Hillary Clinton's comments back in 2016, calling Trump supporters a basket of deplorables.
A punctuation debate now happening in this year's presidential race. So, Gabe, let's talk about Vice President Harris. She was visiting several battleground states today. She gave that speech last night at the Ellipse to an estimated 60,000 people. Talk more about her message to voters there.
That's right. Well, she's embarking on another battleground blitz today, going to North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. But I was at that rally last night at the Ellipse, not far here from the White House, really with the White House as a backdrop. And the Harris campaign saying that that choice was deliberate, one, to signify the gravity of the office and signify how important her comments were, and also that that was the exact location where former President Trump spoke on January 6th, just before some of his supporters attacked the U.S. Capitol. Here's more of what Vice President Harris had to say during that rally.
He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election. We have to stop pointing fingers and start locking arms. It is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict.
And you just heard her there. The Harris campaign really trying to reach persuadable voters at this point, and she made the point that we expect to hear a lot of in the next few days, which is, in the campaign's view, Donald Trump has an enemies list, while Kamala Harris has a to-do list. Joan, Savannah.
Vaughn, let's talk, though, about the former president's schedule. He will also be in North Carolina and in Wisconsin. What can we expect on his schedule?
Right, we're down to less than a week of campaigning here at this point. You know, on that Tuesday, Election Day, he's going to be in Palm Beach, Florida, where he's going to go vote. So really, the clock is ticking on the opportunities to get out on the road and actually have these events. And when you're looking at 7 battleground states that are really in contention that both sides are playing for, it's really going to make for an intense last few days out on the road. And today he's going to be making stop in North Carolina for a campaign event this afternoon. Of course, North Carolina is the one battleground state that he won in 2016 and 2020. His campaign all but needs to hold on to that state, most likely in order to get those 270 electoral votes. And then this evening, he'll be heading up to battleground Wisconsin, specifically Green Bay, where he's going to be joined for that evening rally alongside the likes of former Packers quarterback Brett Favre. Guys.
All right, Vaughn and Gabe, thank you both.
Well, Florida is one of 10 states where abortion will be on the ballot next week. Right now, the state has a 6-week abortion ban in place. If passed, this new ballot measure, it's called Proposition 4, it would expand abortion access up to fetal viability.
One unlikely group of voters is working to garner support for Prop 4. They call themselves Republican Women for Freedom. As the name might suggest, they are registered Republicans who support abortion rights. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett spoke with one of the women behind the effort.
Thank you all so much for coming.
In this suburban living room, a group of women united over a single issue.
I am a pro-choice Republican.
Me too.
There are a lot of women I know who are just like me.
We've got to get them out there to vote.
A lifelong Republican in Florida, Carol Whitmore is laser focused on mobilizing others like her to vote in favor of abortion rights this election.
We decided to start this group. It's called Republican Women for Freedom.
And what was the motivation behind it?
It was to give the Republicans and others a safe place to talk about this issue and talk about facts.
How did you get involved in the issue of reproductive rights?
When I was young, I had to have an abortion, and I thought, well, if people like me don't speak up, it's going to always be this way.
She's using informal house parties like this one to reach conservative women in private, hoping to galvanize support on Amendment 4, a proposal that would wipe out the state's existing 6-week abortion ban and restore access to the procedure up to the point of fetal viability.
We want you to get the message out that nobody messes with our bodies.
Florida, one of nearly a dozen states with abortion rights on the ballot this election, but the only one that requires a 60% supermajority, meaning it needs bipartisan support to pass. Agreement like we found with Jane and her daughter Beth.
So mom liberal, daughter more moderate, and yet on this issue, you're completely aligned.
Absolutely. There are a lot of women like me that might be fiscally conservative, but socially 100% that we believe a woman has a right to choose who decides what happens to her body.
Jane, at times, growing emotional.
We had no legal abortions, and I've fought all my life to get this going. And then it was settled, Roe versus Wade. Wow, yay! And then all of a sudden, it's overturned, and now we're fighting all over again.
But there is deep division among Republicans. Governor Ron DeSantis, who signed the 6-week ban into law, has been actively campaigning for the amendment to fail.
If you don't know what this would do, you should vote no. This is something that is going to be a part of Florida forever.
While former President Trump once said the 6-week ban went too far,
It has to be more time.
he later changed his stance, saying he would vote against the amendment. But back in Manatee County, Carol is staying the course.
You're in the second most conservative county
In Florida.
in Florida.
Yes. Trump will probably win my county, but on this issue, the women are going to speak up.
Laura Jarrett, NBC News, Lakewood Ranch, Florida.
As we get closer to Election Day, efforts to protect the integrity of the voting process are ramping up. Federal and state agencies are working around the clock to identify fake videos that go viral and to stop foreign interference that could mislead voters. One federal cybersecurity group even set up a rumor versus reality webpage. NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley takes a closer look.
Just a week before Election Day, ballot drop boxes on fire, mountains of fake information cluttering the internet, and U.S. officials sounding the alarm about foreign countries trying to sow chaos.
There has been a fire hose of disinformation coming at voters.
Like this video that just went viral purporting to show someone ripping up ballots in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. But it's fake, according to U.S. agencies tracking election misinformation. They said in a statement that the video is part of a Russian disinformation effort to, quote, raise unfounded questions about the integrity of the U.S. election. The agency leading the charge, CISA, the nation's cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency. CISA is tasked with making sure votes are counted, poll workers stay safe, and information like this gets called out for the sham that it is.
They are looking to sow partisan discord, to pit Americans against each other.
CISA's director, Jen Easterly, says the agency is trying to set the record straight on its rumor versus reality webpage. But they have some limits to their powers, like those ballot drop boxes, not their purview. And the agency practicing restraint when it comes to policing Americans' free speech. Like earlier this year, when about 50,000 New Hampshire voters received this robocall from a deepfake pretending to be Joe Biden, telling them not to vote in the state's primary.
Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans.
It wasn't CISA that jumped in, but the state.
That messaging was clearly a form of voter suppression. It was illegal and simply inappropriate.
The Secretary of State telling us his office blasted out a response on social media and in press releases. But why would the feds not get involved?
Why would CISA be reluctant to step in any situation, and why would they rather leave some things to state and locals?
Well, so states, by the Constitution, run elections.
Other constraints, Easterly says, are social media companies cutting their staff that handle government requests to remove disinformation, a hot-button issue.
Obviously, the great thing about America is you have freedoms to include freedom of speech.
If there's bad information that comes from an American citizen and they're protected by free speech online, do you respond differently to that than you would if you know it's coming from a foreign adversary?
Well, we've put out specific information about what our foreign adversaries are doing. But at the end of the day, we are just looking to put out accurate information.
Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat, pushing for CISA to do more in a letter last month arguing that artificial intelligence has supercharged the threats to elections.
Do you think CISA should be the one to tell the American people when something is fake news?
I think that CISA hasn't been willing to lean in as much on the fake news definition because you have so many, candidly, Americans putting out fake news.
Come Election Day, if misinformation is swirling, Warner thinks CISA should be prepared to step in.
The most important thing is to get that word out as quickly as possible, and that may require a federal response.
But in America's patchwork election system, CISA may not be able to put out every fire.
What should voters do if they see something on Election Day that they're not sure if it's true or not?
The trusted source is your state and local election official.
Key for voters to keep in mind as they head to the polls and wait for the results.
Our thanks to Julia Ainsley for that report. Now, CISA says if you are looking for state-specific election information, you can go to the hashtag TrustedInfo2024 page of nass.org. That is the website for the National Association of Secretaries of State.
Well, several major newspapers across the U.S. have decided not to endorse a presidential candidate this year. The most recent decision came last week from billionaire Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post. That is, of course, a storied paper, and it's endorsed in almost every presidential election since 1976.
Now, he announced the paper wouldn't be endorsing either candidate after a draft had already been in the works supporting Vice President Harris. The decision reportedly led to hundreds of thousands of people canceling their subscriptions, with some members of the editorial board resigning.
John Alsop joins us now. He wrote an op-ed about this non-endorsement trend for the Columbia Journalism Review's daily newsletter called The Media Today. John, good morning. Thanks for being here. So just first, let's start point blank. Why are we seeing these publications avoid endorsing a presidential candidate for this election in particular?
Yeah, thank you for having me, first of all. So this is a longer-term trend. It's not just the Washington Post and the LA Times this cycle, but major kind of networks that own lots of local newspapers have stepped away from doing endorsements at the presidential and other kind of major national election levels in recent years. So it's not a totally new phenomenon. And the reason that is often cited for this is reader trust, basically. They say that it makes a newspaper appear biased to endorse one candidate for president over another, particularly in an age where news and opinion content, which was once kind of packaged in a newspaper and clearly separated, sort of floats online. And I think there's also a sense that these endorsements just don't make a lot of difference anymore. People don't rely on them to make their political choices. And so I think there's a sense that, particularly in such a divided country, they can do more harm than good in terms of reader trust. Whether that's the actual reason for these specific decisions made by the billionaire owners of the Post and the LA Times, well, that's been the subject of some debate.
Yeah, John, I want to ask you more about that. I mean, as we mentioned, thousands and thousands of people unsubscribed, not just from the Washington Post, but the LA Times as well. In response, Bezos echoed what you just said. He wrote, presidential endorsements do nothing to tip the scales of an election. How right is he, and has that changed over time? Was there a time when endorsements seemed to have more power and they've lost that as people get their information from more and more sources?
Yeah, I think that's a hard question to answer, scientifically. But I think it's certainly true to say that the media, atmosphere or the media environment today is much noisier, much more fragmented. There are so many more places where people can get their news, that these sort of, news institutions that perhaps traditionally were seen more as gatekeepers of the political conversation, at least to a greater extent, have, I think, lost authority. I think it's worth noting quickly that this is not just a question of endorsements at the presidential level. Local newspapers in particular also endorse candidates, sometimes right down to, quite obscure local municipal offices. I think there's some evidence that those endorsements can still have something of an impact in races perhaps where readers and voters don't have as much information about the candidates. But, people have their opinions. I think it's safe to say by and large about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris by now. It's not to say that these newspaper endorsements can't persuade anybody, but I think it's probably fair to say they're not as influential as they were in the past.
And John, I think what you're saying when you say as influential or they serve a purpose for readers in a down ballot race like that is essentially sort of helping people decide or understanding some of the issues that a particular candidate stands for, which then leads to this question of, well, is that what a paper's for? Well, that's where sometimes this confusion, right, over the paper and then the editorial section, the opinion section of a paper differs, which can be, you wrote, confusing online. And you did write there are some reasonable arguments for killing an endorsement. What are those?
Well, I think it goes back to what we were discussing before. I think if your newspaper puts out, a lot of great fact-driven reporting that someone comes across online and is, convinced is true, but then they see, oh, well, this newspaper endorsed a Democrat or this paper endorsed Donald Trump, maybe it can lead that voter to, distrust the fact-based reporting, which, of course, no one wants. My personal view of this is I think there are good reasons to keep endorsements as well. I think, regardless of their ability to persuade voters, I think that they can serve as a former opinion editor of the Chicago Tribune once put it, an opportunity for newspapers as kind of civic institutions to come to a full stop every few years and to say, here's where we see the world, here's how we stand. I also don't personally think that getting rid of endorsements just on their own is enough to win back reader trust in an environment where that is very low. I think that will require, I think it's a much bigger problem than just endorsements, basically. But yeah, there certainly are some good reasons for getting rid of them. It's a legitimate debate. I think the timing of these decisions by particularly the Washington Post and the LA Times has been what has been most concerning to a lot of people.
John, you mentioned in your piece that the decision to not endorse has some journalists worried about interference in their reporting from their paper's owners. For example, maybe not letting them pursue a report that could upset a high-profile leader. We're real tight on time here, but real quick, is that something that could happen?
I think that Jeff Bezos would say he has not interfered in the reporting of the Washington Post, and I think a lot of journalists at that paper would also say that that is the case. But, the questions have been raised about that in light of this decision, which came from him to kill an endorsement of Kamala Harris that was already prepared. It is something that could happen. That is a downside of billionaires owning news organizations, I would say, whether it's happened or not up to now.
John Alsop, fascinating conversation, certainly a healthy debate. We appreciate you coming here. Thank you.
Thank you.
On Tuesday, a state judge in California sentenced the man who broke into the home of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and attacked her husband with a hammer. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. David DePape was caught on police body cam video in October 2022 attacking Paul Pelosi, violently hitting the then 82-year-old with a hammer. Pelosi spent weeks recovering in the hospital with injuries to his head and neck. DePape is already serving 30 years on federal charges related to the attack.
Time for forecast now. Some severe storms are heightening chances for tornadoes across the plains today. For more, let's get your morning news now weather.
Angie Lastman's here. Angie, good morning.
Hi, good morning, guys. We've been kind of dealing with this lull in weather across the country, quiet conditions for basically the past week or so. Today, we're ramping that up. We've got a storm system that's working across the country. It's going to bring the chance for, as you said, some of those stronger storms to develop as the day goes on and we get into the evening hours, too. Here's what we're talking about, stretching from parts of the Midwest down to the plains. We do have that risk for tornadoes. I'll show you a little bit closer of exactly where we're expecting that here in a moment. But as we look ahead to tomorrow, of course, Halloween, we've still got kind of that active pattern setting up right ahead of that front as it works to the east. So some showers, some thunderstorms from the Great Lakes stretching down to the Gulf Coast will be possible for your Halloween forecast. Now, today, this is the specific area that we're going to watch. Essentially from Dallas up into portions of southern Iowa is where we have the best chance to see some of the stronger storms develop. Now, where you see this orange, though, that's where we have an even better chance, an enhanced risk for some of those stronger storms to happen. And specifically, we're looking for the potential for the hail and the wind, but also some of those larger tornadoes, the EF2s or greater. We've got all the ingredients there. We know it's been quite warm across this area. We've got a little bit of that instability that's going to work across ahead of that front. So no surprise if we see some of those thunderstorms bringing us those impacts. That's something we'll have to watch into the afternoon and even into the evening hours, too. On top of that, we'll see a setup of some good rain happening across parts of the Midwest. Notice Green Bay, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, stretching down to Des Moines, Davenport, all could see the potential for 1 to 2, even up to 3 inches of rain. So we'll watch for that through the day today. And I mentioned those warm and kind of uncomfortably warm conditions for late October. Those are sticking with us. We've got more record warmth today. Some spots will at least be near record. Washington, D.C. expected to hit 79 degrees. We'll head to the 80s for Indianapolis. Even tomorrow, most of that is centered across the Northeast as that front works to the east. Still out ahead of it, upper 70s to low 80s, temperatures that are not typical for this time of year. But then we really see those take a tumble as we got into the weekend. Upper 70s in New York on Friday, but look what happens by Saturday, 58 degrees. We've got the marathon here happening on Sunday. It'll be 61. Even across parts of Indianapolis and Detroit, we'll round out our work week with temperatures into the mid-50s. And then we've got a spooktacular forecast for you across the east, guys, for Halloween. That's your trick-or-treat forecast. The rain, it's going to put a little bit of a damper on folks' plans from the Gulf Coast to the Great Lakes. But otherwise, we've got Tombstone, Arizona at 66 degrees.
Now look at these, Casper.
Spooky.
You practiced that, didn't you?
I should have.
It was great. It was perfect.
Always count on you guys.
That's fun. Angie, thank you so much. See you in a
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.